Hello there. In this video lesson we're going to show you how to set up the user interface in Blender 2.9 from the point of view of jewellery design and 3D printing. I'm going to show you how you can install some add-ons required for this course, including Jewelcraft and the Fluid Designer assets and some other ones as well. Now what we recommend that you actually do is if you go onto the internet and if you go to our website at fluiddesigner.co.uk, and if you click to go to the download page, and if you just scroll down slightly, you'll see that there is a list there of free software that you can download. And essentially you need to work down this list and install the various software and add-ons and assets to get ready for this course. So the first thing that you need to do is to download and install Blender 2.9. So if you click on that link, it will take you to the blender.org download page. Now, Blender runs under Windows, the Mac operating system and Linux, so you need to download and install the appropriate version of the software and get it up and running on your system. And that will obviously take you some time, so I suggest you just pause this video and do that. And then when you come back, make sure you've got Blender itself up and running. So, once you've done all that, like I say, make sure that you've got Blender installed on your system and you're at the opening screen. And Blender should start up looking something like this, and essentially in the middle of the screen here you've got the workspace. Now by default on the workspace there should be three objects. There's a cube, there should be a light source, and there should be a camera. And over here on the right hand side, the three objects are listed in what's called the outliner panel. So this little window here gives a list of whatever objects are on your screen. So if we select the camera first of all, now from the point of view of 3D printing, we don't need a camera, we don't need a light source. And because we're going to work with curves rather than meshes, we don't need the cube either. So the first thing we want to learn is how to delete these objects. Well, if you look down in the left-hand corner of the screen here, there's a little mouse, and whenever I select an object, whenever I click the mouse, or whenever I press a key on the keyboard, it should be displayed in the left-hand corner of the screen here throughout this course. So I want to teach you how to delete these objects. So with the camera highlighted, if I press the X key on the keyboard, notice the X appears, but I also need to click here where it says delete the object. So the camera will disappear from the workspace and it'll also disappear from this list here. Now I also want to delete the light source, which is this little object here. Now it is important that you don't have the mouse over here somewhere when you press X on the keyboard. The mouse does need to be on the workspace. So if you press the X key on the keyboard and delete, that will delete the light source. Now if I click on the cube, now before I delete this cube, what I want to show you is the size of this. And if I just go to view, and here it says sidebar, and notice there's a little N next to it. Now I tend to press N on the keyboard to open up the sidebar rather than go to view and sidebar, but I'll do view and sidebar there. So that opens up this little sidebar panel here, and if I click on item with the cube selected, notice the dimensions of the cube. It's 2 millimeters in the X direction, 2 millimeters in the Y, sorry, not millimeters, 2 meters in the X, 2 meters in the Y, and 2 meters in the Z. And if I just go over here and click on move, red is actually the X direction, green is the Y direction, and blue is the Z direction. And you can see that just up here as well. So it's 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. Now, that's far too big from the point of view of 3D printing. So we need to delete this object and change our system so that it displays a cube that's 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. So to delete this particular cube, we need to hit the X key on the keyboard and click to delete it. Now, how do we change this to millimeters? Well, first of all, if we go to this panel over here, this is called the Properties panel. And what we need to do is to select this one here that says Scene Properties. And we need to click here just to the left of Units. Now, it should by default set it up as metric, but notice the length is in meters. So we need to change meters to millimeters. Now we also need to change the unit scale from 1. Now when I do this, notice there's a grid on the screen at the moment, but when I click in here and hit the backspace key and type 0.001, 0.001 means 1,000th, in other words millimeters. And when I press the enter key, I've got my unit scale now as 0.001, but notice my grid has disappeared, so I need to put the grid back in. And we can do that by clicking up here to the overlays, and we need to change this scale as well. If you click in it and type 0.001, I hit the backspace key to delete it, and when you press the enter key, notice the grid comes back there. Okay, now if I add an object now, so if I go to add and a mesh, now this course we're really interested in using curves for jewelry design rather than meshes. Okay, but curves and meshes, and we'll talk about them more later. But if I go to add mesh and if I add a cube this time, notice it looks like it's the same size as before, and over here in the outline panel it says cube, but notice here it says 2 millimeters this time, 2 millimeters and 2 millimeters. So although it looks like the same cube as before, it's not. It's 1,000th times smaller. Now another thing important to understand is when you go to add mesh or add curve, there's a little thing opens up down here which is closed down, a little panel, and if I click on that, that's quite an important little panel to observe when you add new objects, and notice it says 2 millimeters as the size there. Now we could change it to something like 3 millimeters, and notice it will change the X, Y and the Z dimensions to 3 millimeters if we do that. So just be aware of this little panel, this little window that's down here. Never opens up when you add a new object, but it does appear. Now we don't want this cube on the screen at the moment, so what we can do is we can, with it highlighted and with the mouse in the middle of the screen, if you hit the X key on the keyboard and delete, you'll be able to delete it. Now this little panel over here is the sidebar. And if I just select sidebar there, that'll get rid of that. I don't want that on my screen. Now at the moment I'm looking at our objects from an angle here. Now from the point of view of this course, I want to change my view to the top view. So what you need to do is to go to view and viewpoint and top view. Now when you do that, notice that the grid, these are all these little boxes, they're all 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter boxes. And if you look over here, we should have X on the right hand side, Y at the top, and Z in the middle. So this is the X axis, which is the red line. Y is the green line. Now the blue actually comes out of the screen towards you, so you don't actually see that. Now one other thing is on your system, this little icon here might be switched on, the snap. I'm going to suggest at the moment you switch that off. So we're going to switch the snap off so it shouldn't be lit here. Now what we want to do now is to save our settings that we've just changed here, the unit scale, etc. in millimeters, so that every time we open up Blender, we won't have the light source and the camera, etc. on, and we'll have the top view, and notice it says top here, top orthographic. And the way to save the settings is to go to File and Defaults, and to save the startup file, and you do need to click again a second time. So that's basically how we need to set up part of Blender here for 3D printing, but there's a lot of other things that we need to do as well. So if you go back to the internet and go back to the Fluid Designer download page, so we've downloaded and installed Blender and changed some of the setup there. Now the next thing we need to do is to download and install the Jewelcraft add-on. Now when you click on that link there, it should take you to the Jewelcraft on GitHub page, and essentially what you need to do is to click on code and download the zip file. So download the zip file to your machine. Now if you scroll down the page, notice there are some videos that you can watch there on GitHub, and there are some instructions on how to install it, but we're going to do that for you anyway. So if I just close GitHub down and go back to Blender, we need to install that Dualcraft add-on, and the way to do that is to go to Edit and Preferences, and you need to look for the tab that says Add-Ons, and we need to click where it says Install an Add-on. And now it depends on your system where exactly you have downloaded this file to, but I'm going to go to my downloads page. That's where it should be on my system. And you need to select the add-on that says Dualcraft. Now the numbers on yours might be slightly different from this. Depends which version you install, but I'm going to install this Dualcraft version here. So install the add-on. Now you just need to wait a little bit of time for that to set up. Now on my system it seems to have done it twice. Don't worry about that. You should only get it once. I'm not sure why it's done that on my machine. Some bug in the system, probably because I've installed it before, but very important that you tick this box here to enable it. Very important that you do that. And then if you click to display information on the left, this panel opens up here. Now this is quite important, so don't close Blender Preferences down just at the moment, because we want to install an asset manager. But before we do that, if you go back to the Fluid Designer download page again, you need to also, or the next thing you need to download is the Fluid Designer assets. So when you click on that link, you'll download a file to your system, and this will be quite a big file, and it'll take quite a few minutes to download it because it's about 160 gigabits of data. And these are essentially Blender files and some PNG icons for installing a load of assets onto your machine. So you need to download that. Now obviously I have downloaded it previously, and it should download to your download page. Again, it will vary a little bit depending upon what operating system that you're using. But what I suggest you do is wherever it's downloaded, and you can see it's quite a large file, so it would have taken you several minutes to download that. Highlight it, copy it to the clipboard, or you can just drag and drop it, and go to your Documents folder and paste it. So you could just drag and drop it. I'm just going to replace it. It won't take too long on my system to do that. All right, so you need to copy that, and I recommend copying it to your Documents folder. Now this is just a zipped file, and what you need to do is to double click on it and extract all of the files and folders in this system. Now as you can see, there are a lot of folders to unzip. A lot of them are called patterns, and so what you need to do is to extract them all. And what I suggest you do is make sure that it says here Fluid Designer for 3D printing. So this is a folder that will be created on your system, and I say I'm unzipping it in the Documents folder. And I'm not actually going to extract that in this case because it takes quite some time, but you'll need to do that on your system. So I'm just going to cancel it, and if I just go to my Documents folder now, actually let me just I need to switch that one down because that's actually really the extract window. Is it going to let me? No, it's not. Okay. I'll just go to the Documents folder. When you unzip this, you should get a folder like this, Fluid Designer for 3D printing. And I'll just open it up on my panel on the left here. So Fluid Designer for 3D printing should be the name of the folder. And when you unzip it on your system, you should have a load of folders, many of which are called patterns, and there should be some 3D template folders as well, and some jewelry folders, and there should be just one folder that's called meshes. So you'll have a main folder and then a load of subfolders, and these are the Fluid Designer assets. Now once you've got all that unzipped, and it will take you some time, if you go back to Blender and oops, let me open up Blender itself. And if you go back to the Blender Preferences window, okay, you should have the object Dualcraft ticked and opened up. And there is an icon here for Asset Manager and Waiting. We need the Asset Manager preferences selected. And we need now to make a link between Dualcraft and that unzipped folder there with the Fluid Designer assets. And so the way to do that is to click on plus, and it will say Untitled. So we're trying to link to this asset library. And what you need to do is to double click on the folder here, double click on the folder, and you need to browse to wherever you've put on your system that Fluid Designer folder. So in mine it's under Documents, and double click on Fluid Designer. So you should then get all of these patterns, and you should get these jewelry folders and just one mesh folder and some templates. And so what you need to do is to accept that. So we're creating a link here between Dualcraft and the Fluid Designer assets. Now once you've done that, you can actually close down the Blender Preferences panel. And now what we need to do is to see what have we done here. Well, if I hit the N key on the keyboard, over here on the panel, it should now say Dualcraft. And if I click on Dualcraft and click on Assets, these are the files, these are the ones that you've just unzipped. These are the Fluid Designer assets. And if you click here, you should be able to see all the patterns, the jewelry folders, and the one mesh folder. And what these should all contain different assets. So if you click on any one of these, that's not a good one to choose. Let me choose one that's, I know, let's choose the animal one. Okay, so you can change to various folders, and all of these objects can be placed automatically on the screen. So it's a library of different objects which you can use for jewelry design. Now if I just press the N key on the keyboard to close that panel down again now. Now we don't actually need to go to File and Default and save the startup file here. It wouldn't do any harm to do that, but we don't need to do it when we add an add-on like that. All right, but what we now need to do is to add some other things to our system for using on this course. So if you go back to the internet again and go back to fluiddesigner.co.uk/download. So we've installed Blender, installed Dualcraft, installed and unzipped the Fluid Designer assets. Now the next thing we need to do is to install what's called PyClone. Now this is also an asset manager, but it enables me to see all of the assets, and it enables me to see them in a slightly different way. Now if you click on that link there, PyClone add-on from Creative Designer, it'll just take you to this screen here, and you can read about and you can watch videos about PyClone and how to install it from that screen. Well, I'm just going to close that down, and oops. So that first link there is just to a video and information to read. What you do need to do, however, is to download PyClone. So you need to click on this link here, and we also need to download the Toybox add-on. And it's very important here that we install PyClone first and the Toybox add-on second. And so after you've downloaded those, if you go back to Blender, so to install add-ons, it's a little bit like installing the Dualcraft add-on. You need to go to Edit and Preferences, click on Add-ons, and we don't need Dualcraft open anymore. So we need to go to Install an Add-on, and go to wherever you've downloaded that one, and I've downloaded to my download page here. And make sure you install PyClone first before the library Toybox one. So if you go to PyClone, highlight that and install the add-on. And you just need to wait for it to install it. And then make sure that you enable it by ticking the little box there. So we've got the Asset Manager PyClone there. Now we might as well install the Toybox one as well. So if we click Install and you want Library Toybox Master Zip, and install that add-on. And we also need to enable this, because these two are sort of linked to each other. So once we've got those two enabled, you can close down Blender Preferences. Now, the DualCraft one appeared over here. If I pressed N on the keyboard, that's where DualCraft is. Now, the PY clone doesn't appear over here, so we can press N on the keyboard just to close that down. It's actually hidden in the background. And what we need to do is to create another panel on our screen here so that we can display this asset manager. So we need to split our screen and add another window. Complicated as it is, we still need to add another window. And the way to do that is you need to point the mouse at the bottom of the screen here until you get this double arrow. And then you need to click the right mouse button, and be careful here. And you need to select vertical split, a vertical split. And I suggest that you start off by putting the vertical line somewhere about there. And notice what we've got is on the panel here, a replica of this panel. So this is just the workspace. Well, we're going to keep this workspace here, and we're going to put the PY Clone Asset Manager over here in this panel. And the way to do that is if we point up to this one here, editor type, notice at the moment it says 3D viewport. The current editor type is 3D viewport. And this one is also 3D viewport. And notice over here, this one is the outliner panel. And this one here is the properties panel. So each of these icons in the top left-hand corner are kind of the same. They're just displaying different windows. So over here, in the top left-hand corner, if we click on that one, there, editor type, now instead of 3D viewport, we need to switch it to the file browser. The file browser. Over on the right-hand side, we've got the outliner and the properties windows. We want the file browser window. And that should open up something like this. Now, I'm not exactly certain what you're going to get on your screen when you do this. But the important thing to do is you should get these displayed. What's displayed here might vary a little bit, but you need to click where it says Object Library. And if you then just close this panel down, now we don't need the words Object Library, we can move that right in. Now we shouldn't need to change this, we should only need to click on Object Library and nothing else. Now, what that's done on my particular computer is brought in all of these folders, and these are the same folders that you installed on DualCraft on the other side. Now, it's unlikely on your system that this will be displayed. This is displayed on mine because it has been installed previously. You probably won't see these on your system, so what you'll need to do is to click here where it says Library Commands, and you will need to change the library path. It's kind of defaulted to that on my system because it's been installed previously. That won't be the case on your computer. So if you change the library path, and what you'll need to do is to go to Documents and Fluid Designer for 3D Printing, or wherever you've put this folder on your system. So double click on that. So you should be able to see all of these things here, the patterns, the jewelry folders, and then you can change the library path. Now when you do that, you should get these images displayed here. And what I recommend you do is you select the one that says 3D Templates, Cross-Section, Bevel Objects. 3D Templates, Cross-Section, Bevel Objects. And then if you just go to this window here, the split between the two windows, if you just pull that across a little bit, so that you maximize your workspace here. So this will be your default setting, 3D templates, cross-section, bevel objects, whenever you start Blender in the future. And we need now to save this screen setup. We do need to save it this time. So go to File, Defaults, and save the startup file, and save startup file a second time. So whenever you start Blender now, this PY Clone Asset Manager should start up. Now if I just put the mouse in the middle of the screen, if I just hit N on the keyboard there, the list that's here in DualCraft is exactly the same folder list as we've got over here. The only difference is there are actually some folders over here on the right hand side which even on my 40-inch television screen you can't read them, whereas over here I can in fact keep scrolling all the way down and I can see all the folders. All right, so that's one difference. The other difference is that these images are much bigger than the images over here, and they've also got names on them as well, which is quite useful. There are no names on the assets in Dualcraft. So I'm just going to hit N on the keyboard to close down that Dualcraft panel there. Okay, so we've installed the PY Clone Asset Manager. Again, if you go back to Fluid Designer download page, the next thing that you need to install is Netfab Basic. So if you click on that link, it will take you to Netfab Basic. Now, there is a Windows version and a Mac version. This is a separate piece of software that you need to install on your computer, so you just need to download that and install it. And this is a piece of software that we use to repair our meshes. So anything that we create in Blender, we need to repair it in Netfab Basic because Blender itself isn't, strictly speaking, a 3D design package. So you need to download and install Netfab Basic, and the first time you do it, it'll ask you to get a key. So you can do that. I'm a bit lazy and I haven't got around to do it, so I just do it later. So Netfab Basic is just an independent package which you'll need to download and install, and we use this as a repair tool, and you'll see later that we only use this for about 1 minute, that's all, just to do a quick repair. So I'll just close that down. So that's an independent, separate package that you need to install on your system, Netfab Basic, and it's also free. Now the next thing after Netfab Basic to install is the Booltron add-on. So if you click on Booltron add-on, now Booltron is a tool that we use when we actually working with gems, and it's also created by the same person who created Dualcraft. And so you need to go to code and download the zip file. So download that to your system, and then again, like all the other add-ons, if you go to Blender, if you go to Edit and Preferences and Install, and go to your Downloads folder and look for Booltron and install the add-on. And then always remember to enable the add-on by ticking the box. Okay, so Dualcraft and Booltron. Now Booltron will appear in this panel over here on the right, and it's the N key on the keyboard to open it up. And so this should appear on a little tab here called Booltron. So you'll have Dualcraft and you'll have Booltron over on the right hand side, and we use it for joining prongs to objects and for creating holes for gems to go in. So that's what Booltron is for. So I'll just close that panel down there. And again, if you go back to the internet and go back to our download page, there are a couple of other add-ons that you can install. One of them is the Fluid Designer Parametric Curves. One of them is the Fluid Designer Parametric Meshes. Now, I would hope that you can install these yourself now. And when you do that, just by going to Edit and Preferences and installing them, what you should get is, if you go to the Add menu, they're not installed at the moment on my system. They should appear here. Okay, so let me actually just go to my system, go to Edit and Preferences, and go to the add-ons. Gosh, I can't find it. I don't want Booltron, that's the problem yet. Okay. Yeah, so what it is, I've switched them off actually. I thought they were on my system. You need to add the Fluid Designer Parametric Curves, so that's under Add Curves. And there should be another one, Add Meshes, Fluid Designer Parametric Meshes. Now when you install these, you should be able to tick the box. As you can see, it's a little bit more difficult to find things when they've been installed previously. So there's the Toy Box Library and the PY Clone Asset Manager. Another thing that you could actually do, it's not something that, to be honest, that I actually bother to use, but there is an add-on, can't see it now, there is a 3D printing add-on there as well, which I have to be honest, I don't actually use it. Can't see where it is at the moment. So many here. No, I can't see where it is. You have a look around. There is an add-on there which should be installed on your system which says 3D printing. Can't see it. Just can't see it at the moment. So I'm going to just go down once more, see if I can spot it. No, I can't see it. But there is one there somewhere which you could play around with if you want. Alright, so when you install those two, that you should be able to go to Add Meshes. This is the Fluid Designer Parametric Meshes, and Curve Fluid Designer Parametric Curves. So I'm assuming that you're going to install those add-ons yourself, and that is essentially it now. And quite a lot to do. Don't bother with number 10, but you could install these here. Okay, so what we've done in this particular video is teach you how to set up the user interface, install a number of add-ons, Dualcraft, Fluid Designer, etc., etc. So that's it. That's the end of this particular lesson, this particular video. Thank you for watching.